I've been doing this for 30 years. But
Hmm.
if I can turn back the clock, I do not hesitate for 1 second to do this all over again.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of Smile at Jamie. I'm Dr. Jamie, I'm your host, and today we have a very special guest. I'm so honored to have him here today. He is the past president of AACD, American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, and he is one of the OG COIS mentors, which is so amazing. I just can't wait to introduce him and have him just share his journey today. Yay! Welcome, Dr. David Chan.
Well, hi there, Jamie. It's great to be on your podcast today.
Thank you so much. I did a brief introduction. I'm sure that's just like a little piece of your bio, but can you share a little bit about your journey and what initially inspired you to pursue cosmetic dentistry?
Wow, well, I hope I don't bore your audience because it's a somewhat of a long story. Well, let me just do my best to start from the beginning. My name's Dr. David Chan. I practice aesthetic and comprehensive dentistry in a small town called Ridgefield, Washington, in Washington State, right
Yeah.
outside of Portland, Oregon. And my journey would have to start way back in 1989. That's when I graduated from dental school over 30 years ago. Everybody else, when I first started, I came out of dental school, didn't really know that much, and
Mm-hmm.
proceeded to work as an associate at a practice here locally. And then shortly after that, probably I would say about 4 or 5 years, one of my good friends here in Washington said, "Hey, David, have you ever heard of an organization called the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry?" And I said, "No, I haven't, Frank. What is that?" And he said, "Oh, well, if you're interested in cosmetic dentistry, I would definitely recommend you go to one of their meetings." And,
Mm.
I did. This was back in, 20 some years ago. And I went to the first meeting, and Jamie, it was like I was a kid in a candy store
Yeah.
because I was never exposed to this type of dentistry where you could actually make teeth so
Yeah.
realistic and so conservatively with
Mm.
the materials that we have. Once I did that, I came back and said, "This is a type of dentistry I want to do." Believe it or not, it took a lot of courage, sleepless evenings, but I decided this is what I want to pursue. I
Mm.
gave my 2 months notice where I was an
Wow.
associate, and I proceeded to look for practice. I didn't find any existing practice. And then I did another crazier thing. Of course, I was in my, 20s then, do crazy things. And I said, "Hey, how about if I start a practice on my own from scratch?" And everybody said, "You're
Wow.
crazy. You don't know anything and you're doing that." But you know what? I'm a risk taker. And I believe if you really look around, all the successful people, not only in dentistry, but in
Yeah.
any walks of life, they took a risk at once upon a time in their life. And they are very successful people.
Mm.
So I followed those footsteps and I started my own practice from scratch with zero patients from the first day.
Wow.
I just took as much continuing education as I could, build relationships, and
Yeah.
looking back, that's what is it, 35 years later almost.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Definitely agree. Like risk taking definitely comes with a lot of nerves, but yeah, it's amazing that you just kind of knew and you wanted to go for it. I'm trying to think back because I wasn't even born in 1989, but back then, like, was cosmetic dentistry something that was just up and coming or it was getting established at that time? What was it like?
I was very fortunate. It was just happened to be. There was a show, I'm not sure if your audience is aware of this. There was a show called Extreme Makeover. Have you ever heard of that
Mm,
show before?
yeah, I think there's always like new generations of
Yeah.
that show. Yeah.
I think it ran like 5 or 6 years, and it was
Yeah.
basically a California dentist, and he was doing Extreme Makeover. It became
Yeah.
a very popular show in the United States,
Oh,
and it
okay.
really got a lot of publicity with the general public about cosmetic dentistry.
Mm,
So
that
I was
makes
kind of
sense.
fortunate that I fell into that
The
time area.
era. Yeah.
And that helped. It's not the only one that
Mm-hmm.
helped because where I am currently, this is my second practice. That
Mm-hmm.
practice I sold already, and I started a second one from scratch about
Wow.
15 years ago. The only difference is because I love to teach And
Mm.
so I built my teaching center, which is what you're looking at in the background
Mm.
behind me. So I sold my first practice and I started another scratch practice. There
Oh.
was no extreme makeover on the second time around. So it's always possible if you have the passion, the perseverance to do anything, I believe.
Yeah. Do you do other treatments outside of the cosmetic realm, I would say?
I think to answer that question, Jamie, I believe everything is cosmetic, even though we
Mm.
sometimes like to separate them into different categories,
That's
um,
interesting.
like periodontology, implants, oral
Mm-hmm.
surgery, all those things. I do all of those. I'm a general
Mm.
dentist. I'm not a specialist, but over the years, and I think anybody can do that, is they take the time and the effort to learn all those procedures. I do a lot of, for instance, a lot of anterior implant cases in the
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic zone that requires not only putting the implant, but a lot of
Yeah.
like gum grafting, bone grafting, even sometimes lifting the sinus, things like that. But I do all those things.
So you do both porcelain and composite veneers.
I do. It's just a different, I have more than one tool in my toolbox.
And you mentioned that during the anterior composite course, and you've mentioned that you went around like 50 plus schools in the States during the pandemic holding lectures on anterior composites. How do you decide what type of veneer is the best option for each patient? Like, who are more suited for composite veneers versus porcelain veneers? How do you decide that?
That's a great question, Jamie, and let me try to explain it. First of all, I'm a very loyal disciple of my mentor, probably the greatest mentor I've come across. His name is Dr. John Coyce,
Mm.
Seattle. And he says there's no better dentistry than no dentistry at all. So you
Mm.
don't have to do anything to the tooth. It's the lowest risk. But as dentists, there are sometimes you do have to do something to the tooth to restore it
Mhm.
because of certain things like trauma, cavities, etc. So what I do when you pose the question whether how do I decide what to do, composite or porcelain? I choose the option, and I discuss this with the patient, of course,
Mhm.
whatever is going to propose the least amount of risk to the patient's tooth over the long run. And I say
Mm.
long run, meaning for the rest of the patient's life. That's basically it. So,
Mhm.
give you an example what I mean by that. Let's say no restoration lasts forever, whether
Mhm.
it's composite or porcelain. If that patient is very young, let's say like yourself, you're a very young individual, you've got a long time for that
Yeah.
restoration to outlast you, right?
Yeah.
So I would always do the most conservative. A lot of times composite might be, or composite, right? Did I say
Mm.
that
Yeah.
wrong? Pronounce it wrong. Composite is less invasive sometimes because you don't have to remove the undercuts in the teeth. Whether I'm doing a crown or a porcelain veneer, a lot of times I have to shape the tooth to remove
Mhm.
some of the tooth so that you have the restoration can see. I
Mhm.
don't really need that for composite because
Mm.
I can handle undercuts, as everybody knows. But however, we can achieve the same aesthetics whether we use the material called composite or the material we use called porcelain. To me,
Mm.
it's really no difference. I also get asked a lot, what about strength?
Mm.
Well, to me, composite is weaker than porcelain, obviously. But, I believe with the proper occlusion, managing that, and that's where occlusion comes into play. Both of these materials can last a very long time. So that's how I kind of address which material to use is whatever is the lowest risk to the patient,
Mm.
yet achieves their aesthetic result that they seek.
That's really, really cool because I feel like composite veneers are becoming more popular nowadays, more recently. Because even I came across the idea that composites can last a long time. Like, it doesn't have to be replaced every few years, it doesn't have to chip all the time. So, even that concept was pretty new to me and like, whoa, this is eye opening. So, it definitely comes with a lot of challenges mastering that art. I think it has a lot to do with the skills of the practitioner as well, right? What are some of the challenges that you faced in your career, and then how did you overcome?
They call it, what I know, it's called the practice of dentistry, right? That's what it's called. I believe they call that where you are in Canada and in Alberta as well. So everyone did something the first time, no matter the greatest dentist in the world, they did that for the
Yes.
first time. And the way I overcome those challenges is you just practice more. Don't be discouraged. Sometimes
Mm,
things fail. But if you follow the right protocol and you do the right research and be cognizant of the pros and the cons
mm,
and proceed with it cautiously and judiciously, you'll overcome those challenges. And if it's
mm.
a sound process, by the mere practicing it, you'll be successful one day.
Yeah.
It's just repetitive. What is their book called that I've read? It's called Deliberate Practice. Talent is overrated. So if you do this over and over again, and I'm sure you realize in dental school how long it took the first day to do that occlusal restoration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Today you can probably do it in the sleep. But I would say practice would be my best advice.
Yeah. Yeah, and not fearing failure. And if you fall, just get up and do it
Get up.
again.
Yeah, do it again. As long as you learn from the mistake and not do
Mm,
it again, it's
yeah.
made to fail.
I'm really curious, were you always this kind of risk-taking person, or is that something you mentally exercise yourself to become that kind of person?
I would say, not that now that I think about it, I would say yes, because I'm a very curious person. I want to find out things. And if I don't know the answer, my thinking is, let me find out.
Mm,
To this day, I do the same because I believe as a dentist, or actually for every profession, they should be a student for life. There's
yeah.
always something new. When I went to dental school, there were hardly implants coming out. Definitely no cone beam machines. Definitely no digital scanners and things like that. Like even now, and definitely no exocad. And I mentioned exocad because that's my next endeavor. I'm learning exocad now, so I can design my own restorations. So
That-
ever, forever learning.
That's incredible. You kind of mentioned Dr. John Coyce being your biggest mentor in your career. How did you get into that world of Coyce Center?
That's a very wonderful question. Okay. Because there's such a thing, and I think I touched with a lot of other dentists' mind when I say this, is when I graduated from dental school,
Hmm.
occlusion, that very word would strike fear into our hearts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because at that time when I graduated, it's like whenever I prepped a tooth, whether it's a crown or filling, you always back yourself up with where's the bite?
Mm,
Okay, what's holding the bite? Because if I prepped every tooth, there won't be a bite, and you have
yeah.
to figure out where that is. So Dr. Coyce gave me the confidence by learning how to manage the occlusion. Really, based on the joint, I don't really need the teeth to guide me
Mm,
where to go back to home, where the bite is. Because I thought about it after the fact. Hey, what if the bite's wrong to begin with? If I'm just doing conforming to the patient's existing bite, I'm really not benefiting them or changing the outcome for the better. So occlusion gave me a tool to start all over again from a different bite that I can
mm.
typically give the patient.
So did you meet Dr. John Coyce at a conference? How did you come across his teaching center? Like, I don't know, I'm just so curious how this friendship sprouted.
Okay. I've known John. He goes, when I say Dr. Coyce, he goes, John. It's not Dr. Coyce,
Mm,
it's John. He's very informal. I am very fortunate because I mentioned early on your podcast that I live in the state of Washington, right? I'm just down
mm.
south on the border between Washington and the state of
Oh,
Oregon.
yeah.
Dr. Coyce's teaching center is only 3 hours drive from my house. So geographically, that made it very enticing to
Yes.
go there. It just happened that he is located very close to me. And
Yeah.
how I knew of him was basically from other colleagues talking. And in fact, I did have another colleague that took his course and said, Dave, if you want to learn occlusion, only
Mm,
3 hours away, go for it. And I did that probably almost 20 years ago. And then I teach at the center now with Dr. Coyce because
yeah.
I'm a clinical instructor there. In fact, I just came back from there last week.
It's incredible. It's so wonderful how you get to go back to the center as the mentor, and I can sense the passion inside of you to pass along the wisdom to the next generation, and just giving back in that sense is so admirable, I would say, and inspiring. Well, you've mentioned about like continuing learning, lifelong learning, the program at the Coy Center, and all of that. What are some of your goals now? Do you set goals regularly, or I like having practiced for decades and achieved what you achieved? I'm curious to know if you have goals and what they are, if you do.
I do. I do. Actually, it took some time for me to arrive at this goal is, as I mentioned earlier, I've been doing this for quite some time. Now, I enjoy this immensely. I've been doing this for 30 years. But if I can turn back the clock, I do not hesitate for 1 second to do this all over again. But no one can turn the clock back, right? So my goal now is teaching. So my goal this year is to see if I can get a partnership in my practice, because I only practice 2 days a week here. We do a lot of big cases. So I practice 2 days. So my goal this year is to find a someone that's like-minded, want to do comprehensive dentistry, so that I can mentor them, have them take over this place. But I still want to keep my hands wet, maybe not be in control of the whole practice. And I want to teach because I teach all over the world, and I like to do more of that, like to see more of the world too. So that's my goal, is to find a partner for my
Yeah.
practice and mentor them to success, while at the same time I focus on teaching and traveling.
Yeah. So you'll be teaching at your center and also travel to teach like both at the same time?
Yeah, I teach all over the world. I
Yeah.
teach at my center, and I'm a key opinion leader for a lot of products. I do a lot with Clinical Research Dental, great company that I do a lot of work for and lecture for them in Canada, even.
It's incredible how you say, like, if you were to go back in time and do it all over again, you'd do it again.
Oh,
That's a
not,
powerful statement.
I wouldn't even think about it for a second.
Wow. What do you think it was that makes you enjoy what you do?
You might want to look this up, but there's a philosopher once said, now don't quote me, it may not be in the exact word. What he said was it was a French gentleman. This is hundreds of years ago, okay? And basically what he said was to him, meaning me in this case, that he does not know whether he's working or playing, and he lets others to decide what exactly he's doing at any given moment. That's how I live my life, because to me it's not a job. I don't know if I'm going to the office to play or to work.
Wow.
And that's likewise when I teach. That's why when I go to the Coy Center probably 4 or 5 times a year to
Yeah.
teach young people the new knowledge. That's, to me, it's not work, it's play for me. So I enjoy doing it. Same thing when I spend time with my patients. It's like it's play to me. That's what keeps
Wow.
things interesting. As long as I can do it, I don't want to be
Yeah.
there.
Which kind of procedure do you enjoy the most?
I would say composite would be my most enjoyable
Ah.
procedure, because I can give that patient a very nice aesthetic result pretty much in one appointment, because I get to apply the shade, that's correct, match their tooth, and shape it to the way that it should be shaped. Because with composite, it's not just the shade, it's also the shape. And
Yeah.
we as a dentist get to do that, whereas sometimes we miss that opportunity with ceramics, right? Because the lab does that.
Yeah. Did you always want to be a dentist as a kid?
No, because my mother was a physician. She was an anesthesiologist, and my dad was a one of those big, huge contractors that built skyscrapers in Hong Kong.
Oh, wow.
If you've been to Hong Kong, you've seen how big those buildings are, easily
Yeah. Yeah.
80 stories high. So my mother was a physician, and you know how it is. They want their kids to go.
The Asian parents.
Yeah. So I said, Mom, I don't want to do your medicine. I like dentistry, because I always liked to build model airplanes and stuff like that when I
Like
was a
making,
kid,
yeah.
make it sticking,
Yeah.
gluing things together, right? So I said, I like something to work with my hands, and dentistry seems like it might be a way to go. And I explored that when I was in college. I didn't know what I
Yeah.
wanted to do until like the third or fourth year of college.
Yeah.
And I went to a job fair where they introduced me to dentistry, and I said, hey, I'd like to try this. And I applied, and they took me, and that's how it started. So no, I
Wow.
didn't always want it to be a dentist until like the fourth year of college.
Oh, that's cool. I'm wondering what were some of the key like milestones in your career that led you to become the president of AACD? I know you found your passion and the commitment and dedication to become a cosmetic dentist at their first event. And then years later, for you to become the president, a lot has happened, I'm sure, over those years.
I joined the AACD. In fact, the AACD was the reason that I started my first practice from scratch, right? Once I became a member of the AACD and I saw the things that they do, and oh, before I forget, I want to mention there's something very unique about the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry is they have a process called accreditation. Have you heard that before? That
Yeah,
process there.
yeah.
So no other organization on the planet has that. And it's basically a very stringent test that dentists have to go through to pass that, to become
Yeah.
accredited. And that kind of intrigued me. So I went for that. It took a lot of work and a lot of hours, but I achieved that not because I can hang the plaque on the wall. That doesn't mean that much to me. It was a personal challenge, and I overcame that challenge. One of the things that is most challenging in that process called accreditation was the composite part, the composite part, because you have to do 6 or more direct veneers. Now they say 6 or more, could be 10, right? Depending
Yeah.
on what shows in the smile. And then they also have to do a large class 4. And I noticed that it was very difficult for some younger dentists to achieve that because I've been to 50 some dental schools in the US in the last 2
Yeah.
years. I don't know about Canada, but in the States, they don't teach that. Do they teach that in Canada?
No.
Okay, so I found that it was not something that was well taught, and I wanted to teach that to other dentists for the accreditation process. And also, I wanted to reach out to more people, and I thought, hey, becoming the president of the largest cosmetic organization in the world would be a good place to start because we've got members in almost 70 countries throughout the world. And that's why I say, hey, if I get to be the president, I get to be the spokesperson for that organization for a year or
Yeah.
two. And that's what actually got me, to go to all the dental schools that I spoke of. Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. I love how you just dream, set the standard high, go for it, and make it happen.
It always happens, Jamie. You just have to be willing to go the extra mile and make it happen. I believe
Wow.
that in anything that anyone wants to do, not just dentistry, applies to everything.
And I think successful people have this mindset. And I feel like that mindset is where all of this happens. Do you have any like daily rituals or habits that you have or have been following for a long time?
Well, coffee's first. That's before anything. Okay, in the morning.
Do you like it black?
I
Do
like
you
it
like,
black. It
okay.
varies. Sometimes I'll put a little cream in it, but usually black. And then what I do is I like to read an article of some sort
Like
in
scientific
not
journal?
scientific dental journals.
Dental.
And then sometimes I'll look at I'm a big fan of photography, not
Yes.
dental photography. Well, dental photography too. I take all the pictures of my patients, but I
Yeah.
like to do landscape photography. So
Yeah.
one of my rituals is define where I want to go the next year. Do the research. Take 10 minutes every morning. So far, I've got
Wow.
Antarctica on the horizon next year.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's dream life. Taking 10 minutes of every morning.
yeah,
Where am I going to go next year?
yeah. This year I went to Norway earlier this year.
Yeah, your photos are stunning. And I believe you take groups of dentists to
Yeah,
take
we
photos
have about
together as well?
10 dentists that go all around the world
Wow.
every year.
So if people are interested, how do they join that club?
They just let me know. I say, okay, you want to go? This is the time when we're going.
Wow, that's so fun. What would be the advice that you would give to young, aspiring dentists who want to specialize in cosmetic dentistry and kind of achieve the similar success that you have?
That's easy. Get the education. It's life learning. Get the education that you need. And when I say education, I mean you got to really be involved in it. It's not like a weekend course or something like that.
No.
I would suggest courses like Koi Center is a good place to start because that teaches. It's let me see. Let me count. It's like if you do all the days, it's almost 30 days,
Yeah.
1 month if you did all the courses. Okay,
Yeah.
and you really get a good grasp of how to reconstruct the bite. It's like doing a prosthodontic residency
Yeah,
in
it's
a
like a
month.
mini, yeah.
Okay, because you don't have to read all the articles, all that stuff. Okay, it's not academic, it's more practical. So get the education. So that's occlusion. Now you want aesthetics. I would definitely take like your composite, your ceramic courses. There's a
Mm,
myriad of them out there. Get as much education one can. Education is power. That will build milestones as well. Whatever it
yeah.
may be, it could be cosmetics, it could be any aspect of dentistry. But since we're talking cosmetics, that's what I would
Mm-hmm.
do. But one thing that's very important, it's not just about cosmetics, it's about function. All those beautiful teeth have to work together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you don't want those things to break down and not last long.
That's right.
That's what initially drew me to pursue Kois because I'm like, I don't know much about occlusion. It was like a mysterious island that we never really went in dental school. And it is a big investment. And you kind of touched on like taking risks and taking that step to get to the next level. And especially I think in the States, the dental school tuition students come out with so much debt, student loans, so it's a big risk that we, I guess, have to take. But every time I look at the payments go through, I'm like, is this worth it? Is this worth it? And then every time I talk to people like you who's done it over years of practice, they're like, you're in it for a good ride and you're not going to regret it. And this is one of the best investments that you can make. So I try to tell myself, Jamie, you're doing it right.
Oh, it's
But
worth
yeah.
it, absolutely. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. So here's another saying that I would give young dentists advice. It will always work, okay? But however, it's going to be uncomfortable for sure.
Very,
I was
very.
uncomfortable, but you got to be comfortable to be uncomfortable,
Hmm.
and then you will always be successful. That's my opinion.
That's so cool. Who were your role models as a young dentist?
Well, I mentioned one. You got
Yeah,
Dr. Coyce.
yeah.
You've got Dr. Spears. Frank Spears is a great inspiration. Gosh, there are so many. Another dentist. He's a dentist and a ceramicist.
Mm,
Actually, I just saw him a couple months ago. His name is Ed McLaren. He was a
mm,
dentist in my era that used to teach at UCLA, an aesthetics program there. Bill Robbins, I've taken many courses from him from Texas. Great mentor, really good with gum grafting. Carl Misch, before unfortunately he passed away a number of
mm.
years ago. That's where I learned a lot of my implant
Wow.
skills.
You did mention during your course that you went to a ceramist to learn how to do beautiful wax ups and all that.
Yeah, I went to Pascal Mania is.
Yeah,
He
he's
used to
he's
teach
a
at
big
you.
part.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I just met him. He autographed his book. I was in his office a couple months ago. I
Oh
was
wow.
lecturing at Loma Linda. And well, I didn't learn from him. I learned from his brother. His brother's name is
Mm,
Michel Mania. He is a master ceramicist. And Michel taught
wow.
me the morphology of what teeth should look like because they do
Wow.
that all the time.
That's so crucial when you are trying to master composite veneers, right? Understanding anatomy, shapes, and all that. So that's so amazing. Is there any story that you can share in your journey to becoming a successful cosmetic dentist? Like with the patient communication or in patient care, you were challenged, but then you found a way?
Yeah, absolutely. So with patients, we dentists are very used to, let's say for example, you have a new patient come in and he or
Yeah.
she broke a tooth, right?
Yeah.
Let's say they broke a molar or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You see that all the time. Everybody knows what to do, right? They need to either crown that tooth or put a filling in it or
Yeah.
something to restore that tooth. Well, I do that, but I don't tell the patient that initially. I try to be the detective and
Mm.
I try to understand, why did that tooth break? Is it just because the patient hit on it wrong? They bit into a rock or whatever? And figure that out. Because if the patient understands that, they're willing to accept it. Because if they broke a tooth and I just said, Mr. Smith, you need a crown, I'm just a commodity.
Mm.
Because every dentist in town will say you need a crown, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I would be very surprised if a lot of dentists would say, Mr. Smith, you broke this crown because of your occlusion. And if we don't address this, you might risk your other teeth breaking or wear
Mm,
one down. Because I want the patient to own the problem. It's not just broke a crown and anyone can fix it. I want the patient to value not my skill to do a new crown. I want them to value my brain,
mm,
how I go about thinking, what's going to give them the lowest risk moving forward. Because if it's an occlusion problem, let's say for instance it is, and they broke the tooth or wore it out, if I just do a crown, I didn't help him at all, because then the next tooth is going to break, or my crown's going to break. So I like to have them understand the bigger picture.
mm-hmm.
And you'll be surprised, Jamie. A lot of times people will start accepting treatment. And even though they can't, because everybody, we're human beings, we want the best for ourselves. And sometimes it doesn't become just whether insurance pays for it or how much it is. Because I know, and a lot of people know, if you want something bad enough, you're going to go for it. And you're going
Yeah.
to find ways to do that. If the
Yeah.
smile's the most important for whatever reason, they'll find the resources to do that.
Mm.
So I want to touch on that a little bit, because I think there's a lot of your audience that's going to wonder, how do I get my patients to do these things? The way you do it, get educated,
Yeah.
continue in education. You have a great foundation from school. It's time to build on that.
Yeah.
That's when
Yeah.
it comes, that's lifelong. It's not
Yeah.
stop at dental school. And
Yeah.
if the patient understands it, they'll most likely do what you tell them to, because
Yeah.
they want the best for them. It's not for me or for you,
Yeah.
for them. We like that.
And I think definitely education like Koi's understanding occlusion and all that gives that confidence to make that conversation with the patient too, right? Because if you don't know, then you don't know. I think Dr. Kois always says, what you don't know, you don't know.
It's so true.
It's been such an inspiring 40 minutes with you.
Hey, you just
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm so grateful and honored to have met you and having you on my podcast. And it's just funny how life works sometimes, because I was like, I want to meet him. I knew that you were a Kois mentor and I was following you on Instagram, and I'm like, I want to meet him. And then things happen
No, things
and you
happen.
were in Calgary. And I'm like, I'm there.
You were there. You were in my class.
Yeah, that course was amazing. Very hands-on, very practical. I was able to use that skills back in my practice, so I cannot thank you enough. But
Hey, that's my pleasure.
yeah, thank you so much. And I always ask this question to all my guests.
Okay.
If you were to go back in time, that you were to give yourself an advice as like a new grad David, what would you tell him?
So said I graduated in 1989, and I became so what is that, 35 years ago?
Oh, wow.
I hope I don't look 35 in practice. I don't hope I
You
look
look great. You
that
look great.
old. Okay, but anyway, and I spent I would say the first 8 or 9 years in my life just practicing. I was an associate for 5 or 6 years when I started my practice. And I really didn't seek CE as I do today. I do more CE than the first 8 or 9 years of my career. And my advice to dentists these days, get the CE as quick as you can, because time doesn't wait for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, 30 years went by just like that. If you want to do something like this, which I think, your listeners do, that's why they're listening to the podcast, get the CE as quick as you can. I'll give you an example. I know you went to Dr. Kois's center a couple years ago or a year ago.
Yeah.
Do you see how young the people there are? They're probably out of dental school like 3, 4 years, a lot of them.
Yeah, I was out of school like 4 years when I
Yeah.
first went. Yeah.
When I went there, it was people out of school 20 years. You see how the demographics changed in 15, 20 years. So that would be my best advice, because I wish I would have learned all this 5 years earlier, 5, 6 years earlier than I did. Time doesn't wait for anybody, but since you asked, I'm going to tell you, that would be my only thing if I can do it all over again. I get the education sooner
Jump
than
in.
later. Yes.
That is so good. Yeah, thank you so much for spending your 40 minutes of your day with me and with the audience, sharing your life story and wisdom. We are so honored And yeah, I hope to see you at the Koi Center
Yeah,
sometime.
maybe. Yeah, yeah, anytime. It was great talking to you, Jamie, and I just got off work and wish you get some rest and you for the interview. You did great.
Thank you so much.
All right.